Hello and welcome to today's soul session. How to stop outsourcing your power and start living from sacred sovereignty. Hello, my fellow butterfly travelers. Welcome home to this sacred circle where we don't just talk about healing, we embody it together. I am Babs, your chief travel partner for this journey inward. And whether this is your very first session or you are a soul who's been circling back each week, please know you are seen, known, and called forward by something deeper than coincidence. You are here by divine appointment. Each time we gather, we remember a little more of who we really are. Not the roles that we've played, not the wounds we've carried, but the truth that has never stopped whispering beneath it all. So let's begin, as always, by arriving. I invite you to take a deep breath with me and to let it go. To let your shoulders drop and let the noise of the day fade. Let your nervous system know we are safe here. Let me begin by asking you something gentle but honest. Something your soul has likely whispered before, even if your mind hasn't fully formed the question. Have you ever stopped to notice just how much of your power you've handed away, quietly, almost invisibly, just to make it through? And not because you were weak and not because you didn't know better, but because at some point in your life it felt safer to survive than to stand in your sovereignty. Let's name some of those ways. Maybe you learned to become the good girl or the strong one, the one who always says yes, who always shows up, who always fixes what others break. Maybe you've said yes when your body screamed no. You smiled when your heart was breaking. You stayed silent when your soul longed to roar. You became who someone else needed you to be. Perhaps a parent, a partner, a boss, or a belief system. You see, because belonging felt more urgent than authenticity. You've learned to be liked rather than be free, to be palatable rather than powerful, to be enough in their eyes rather than whole in your own. And if this is stirring something in you, take a deep breath. You are not alone. So many of us, especially those of us called to spiritual leadership or deep inner work, we've lived some version of this story. You see, we've confused people-pleasing with love. We've mistaken compliance for compassion. We have swallowed our truth, thinking that it was more holy to keep the peace than to be the peace. But here's the real truth, love. Survival is a necessary skill, but it is not the sacred goal. Survival teaches us how to cope, how to endure, and how to get through, and that is noble. That is strong, and that deserves to be honored. But if we're not careful, we can get stuck there. We start believing that our own worth is measured by how well we minimize ourselves, that our strength lies in how much we tolerate, that playing small is somehow spiritual. That is the spell that we are here to break. Because sovereignty is not the same as survival. Sovereignty is the sacred remembrance that you are whole, holy, and held. And not because of what you do or who approves of you, but because of who you are in your deepest essence. Sovereignty is the vibration of alignment. It is your divine inheritance to live guided from within rather than governed by what's outside. When you live in survival, your power leaks through the cracks of obligation, shame, fear, and false identity. But when you live in sovereignty, your power becomes radiant, rooted, and reclaimable. And so today, dear one, we're not just talking about getting your power back, as if it were something lost in the wilderness of your past. We are talking about remembering that you are your own sacred source, not in isolation, not in the rugged, go-it-alone independence the world often sells, but in unity with the infinite, with the God that breathes through you, with the still small voice that has never left your side. This is about returning. Returning to the center of your being, returning to your divine discernment, returning to your truth, not the borrowed beliefs, not the edited versions of you, but the raw, radiant, holy expression that is your soul. You see, we live in a world that teaches us to outsource everything. We outsource our worth to applause. We outsource our choices to social norms. We outsource our spirituality to institutions. We outsource our intuition to experts, and we even outsource our sense of belonging to systems that were never designed to honor our wholeness. But what if the path back to power begins not with striving, but with surrender? What if it starts by pausing long enough to hear your own voice again? You see, that's what sacred sovereignty is. It's the daily, deliberate act of coming home to yourself. It's saying, I choose to listen within before I lean out, and it's trusting that your inner knowing is not naive or dramatic or dangerous. It is divine. And here's what I want you to remember with every breath in this moment. You are not too much. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are awakening. Awakening to the truth that your life is not meant to be lived by default, dictated by outdated scripts or inherited expectations. Your life is meant to be lived by divine design. And that begins the moment that we stop handing our power away and start reclaiming our voice, our choices, and our sacred authority. So let this be a gentle invitation. Not to do more, but to come closer. Not to strive harder, but to listen deeper. Not to hustle for your worth, but to embody your wholeness. Because the truth is, you don't need anyone's permission to be free. You were born for this. You've simply been remembering. And to you in this moment, I say, welcome home. Let's slow it down for a moment, friends. We've named the invitation to move from surviving to self-sourced sovereignty. Now let's look gently, but honestly, at how we've been leaking our power, often without even realizing it. Because here is the truth. Your power doesn't usually leave in one dramatic moment. It slips away quietly, gradually, like the water from a cup with tiny cracks that you don't even notice forming. You don't wake up one day and say, I think I'll abandon myself today. No. You wake up and you say yes, when everything inside you is begging for no. You laugh when something wasn't funny. You apologize when you did nothing wrong. You withhold your truth to avoid rocking the boat. And you silence your needs in order to keep the peace or keep the job or keep the love. These are what I call power leaks, those small, repeated moments of self-abandonment that adds up over time and begins to create an identity that isn't truly yours. So let's name a few of those most common patterns of power leaks. Not with judgment, but with love. Because what we name, we bring into the light. And what we bring into the light, we can reclaim. The first, the yes that meant no. Every time you override your inner knowing to say yes out of obligation, guilt, or fear, you create a fracture in your sovereignty. This doesn't mean that you're selfish for wanting to say no. It simply means that you're honoring the truth of your body, your energy, your spirit. Saying yes when your heart says no is a transaction that costs more than we can see in the moment. It seems harmless at first, but over time we wake up exhausted, resentful, disconnected from our own needs. One of the most radical acts of self-honoring is learning to say no thank you. without apology or explanation. Just truth, standing gently in its own knowing. The second is deferring to external authority before checking inward. This one runs deep, especially for those of us raised in systems, religious, academic, cultural, that taught us that the answers were always out there. How often do you find yourself asking others, "What do you think I should do?" before pausing to ask yourself the same question? How often do you override your intuition because it doesn't align with what the world considers logical or acceptable? When we consistently put others' opinions, validations, or interpretations above our own knowing, we send a message to our soul that you don't trust me. And the soul, like a child wanting to believe, grows quieter until we choose to listen again. Inner authority is like a muscle, and the more that you use it, the stronger it becomes. But it begins with the sacred pause. The moment you turn inward and ask, "What do I know to be true?" And let that be enough. Our third way is silencing or editing our voice. Let's talk about your voice, your expression, your boundaries, and your needs. How often have you muted your truth for fear of being too much, too emotional, too intense, too spiritual, too bold? Or maybe the opposite. How many times have you felt like you weren't enough, and so you stayed silent? We are taught early that being agreeable is safer than being authentic. But the soul does not thrive in suppression. It blooms in expression. When you edit yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone, you leave yourself behind. And let's be clear, this isn't about reckless honesty or speaking without discernment. It is about alignment. It is about allowing your voice to be an instrument for truth, not a performance for approval. Your voice was not given to you to echo others. It was given to create resonance with your own divine frequency. And the fourth way is betraying your values to keep the peace. This one may be the most subtle and the most painful. Have you ever stood in a room, in a relationship, or in a decision and felt that your soul contract because what was being said, done, or expected was out of alignment with your values? And yet you stayed silent. You smiled. You participated because disrupting the moment felt harder than disrupting your peace. That, my love, is a slow and painful power leak. When you compromise your values to avoid conflict, you're not keeping the peace, you're keeping the illusion of peace. Real peace is born from truth, and real sovereignty means learning to let discomfort pass through the room while staying rooted in who you are. You see, here's the compassionate truth about all of this. You've done what you needed to do to survive. That's not failure, that's resilience. But if you're listening to this now, chances are your soul is ready to evolve from surviving into self-sourcing. And that means recognizing those power leaks, not to shame yourself, but to lovingly seal them up with boundaries, with truth, with grace. And don't worry, reclaiming your power doesn't mean burning everything down or cutting everyone off. It means beginning with one small, sacred step, one honest no. Speak one unedited truth and ask yourself first before anyone else. You see, you don't have to do it all today, but you can start today. And let this be the moment that you stop leaking your sacred energy and begin reclaiming the wholeness that has always been your birthright. And now that we've named the ways that our power leaks quietly, let's take a deeper, more soul-centered look at the roots of those patterns. Because surface change is not what we're after. We're not here for quick fixes or temporary empowerment. We are here for the kind of reclamation that begins in the marrow of your being and echoes through every dimension of your life. So here is a sacred question. Where in your life are you still living in borrowed beliefs? Take a breath and ask that again, not from your mind, but from your soul. Where am I living in the beliefs that are not mine? Maybe they came from your family, spoken or unspoken rules about who you needed to be in order to be loved. Maybe they came from a church or a school or a culture that taught you that holiness means hiding your humanity, or that worthiness has to be earned. Maybe you came from society's stories about what success looks like, or what women are allowed to want, or what kind of body, background, or identity makes someone valuable. Borrowed beliefs are beliefs that we've inherited, not chosen. They often enter our consciousness through repetition, fear, or trauma. And here's the thing, they're usually not malicious. Most of them were passed down by people doing the best that they could with the awareness that they had. But just because a belief helped someone else survive doesn't mean it's meant to help you thrive. Let me offer you some examples and see if any of these ring true in your body, not just your mind, but your body. I must always put others first, or I'm selfish. If I slow down, I will fall behind. If I say what I really think, I'll be rejected. My dreams are too big. I should be more realistic. I am too sensitive. I need to toughen up. It's not safe to trust myself. I need someone else to tell me what is right. Each of these is a spell, and the thing about spells is they lose their power the moment we recognize that we're under one. Here is a sacred truth. When we have lived in borrowed beliefs, we lose connection with divine wisdom. It's like trying to walk a path by someone else's map, but with none of their landmarks matching up to your terrain. You end up feeling confused and disconnected, sometimes directionless, and not because you're broken, but because the map isn't yours. That confusion leads to what I call self-abandonment. Now, self-abandonment might sound like a harsh term, but I want you to hear it through the lens of compassion. You see, this isn't about blaming yourself for the ways that you've adapted. This is about gently illuminating where you've been living outside your own center and inviting you to come home. Self-abandonment looks like saying yes when you mean no again and again. Dismissing your intuition because it doesn't make logical sense. Staying in relationships, roles, or routines that feel soul-numbing because they're familiar or they make others comfortable. Performing a version of yourself to maintain approval, admiration, or affection, or avoiding silence or stillness because you're afraid of what your soul might say. In every one of those moments, you are not weak. You are simply protecting something sacred, belonging, connection, safety. But when the cost of belonging is the betrayal of truth, that is not connection. That is captivity. And your soul wasn't born for captivity. It was born for communion with the divine, with yourself and with others who can hold your truth without requiring you to shrink. So how do we begin the journey back to ourselves? It starts with recognition. Let yourself become lovingly curious, not judgmental, not defensive, just present. Ask, what belief am I living by right now? Is it mine or did I inherit it? Does it align with the wisdom that I now carry? And if the answer is no, here's the good news. You can return it. You can say thank you for what this belief tried to protect in me, but I don't need it anymore. You can bless it and release it. You can choose again. You can choose a new belief, not because it's trendy or pleasing to others, but because it resonates in your bones, because it opens you up instead of shrinking you down. because it is aligned with your own inner truth, not someone else's expectation of who you should be. And when you begin to live from your own truth, your divinely aligned truth, you no longer need to hustle for worthiness. You no longer need to prove your value or manage others' perceptions. You no longer silence the whisper just to avoid the discomfort of the roar. You simply stand, and not in arrogance, not in performance, but in sacred authority. And from that place, everything changes. Your decisions become more honest. Your boundaries become more loving. Your energy becomes more available for what actually matters. Your life begins to feel like yours again. Now, just know this journey is not linear. And you may find yourself slipping into old beliefs, especially when you're tired and afraid or triggered. And that's not failure, that's human. The invitation is not perfection. The invitation is presence. And the more often you pause to check in with your inner compass, the more natural it becomes to course correct. Eventually, self-abandonment becomes too painful to sustain, and self-honoring becomes your default setting, not your occasional breakthrough. Let me offer you this as a metaphor. Imagine your life as a sacred temple, and for years, many decades possibly, you've let others bring in their furniture, their stories, their rules, their expectations. And maybe you didn't even notice it happening. But now you're waking up. You're looking around and realizing this is not how I want my temple to feel. And so you begin the slow, holy process of clearing it out. One chair at a time, one belief at a time, one choice at a time, until one day you stand at the center of your life, barefoot on sacred ground, and say, this space is mine. My soul lives here, and I will no longer decorate it with borrowed truths. This, my friends, is self-sourced sovereignty, and you, beloved, are worthy of living from it. So now that we've begun to recognize the beliefs that don't belong to us and the quiet ways that we've left ourselves behind, the question naturally arises. How do we begin to return to ourselves? How do we start to live not from fear, not from programming, not from pressure, but from the sacred place within, where truth is steady, clear, and alive? And the answer, my fellow butterfly travelers, is found in this simple but radical shift. We begin to make decisions differently. Not different decisions, different ways of deciding. Because most of us were taught that decision making is a mental process, a weighing of pros and cons, a spreadsheet of what's practical, expected, or efficient. But sacred decision making, the kind that leads you back to yourself, isn't born from logic alone. It is born from alignment. Sacred decisions don't just make sense, they make resonance. They echo through your whole being like a tuning fork, vibrating with clarity in your heart, your body, and your soul, even if the mind is still catching up. So let's break it down gently. The old way, reactive, fear-based, or performant decisions. You see, most of us have been conditioned to make decisions from one of three places. One is reaction. You choose something in order to avoid something else, usually discomfort, conflict, or uncertainty. You say yes to keeping the peace. You say no because you're afraid to be seen. You delay decisions altogether because fear has frozen your ability to trust yourself. Or maybe it's fear. You're operating from a place of scarcity, a mindset of scarcity of time, of money, of worth. And you ask, what if I fail? What if I can't handle it? What if I'm wrong? And you try to calculate safety before you consider alignment. And the third is performance. You choose your decision based on what will look good for approval or alignment with the image of success, even if your soul is whispering, not this. All of these are understandable. All of them make sense, especially if you've lived through trauma or been taught that pleasing others was the safest path. But none of them lead to sovereignty. None of them deepen your intimacy with your own inner guidance, and none of them will ever deliver the peace that your soul is craving. So let's introduce a higher path, a holier one. Sacred decision-making is less about choosing quickly and more about practicing discernment. Discernment isn't just another word for good judgment. It's the art of listening inward long enough to feel the vibration of truth move through you. Here's how sacred decision-making often feels. Grounded, not frantic. Expansive, even if it's a bit scary. Quietly certain, even if others don't understand. Aligned with love, not fear. And it often sounds like, I don't know why, but I know this is mine. This may not make sense on paper, but it's clear in my spirit. And this path may ask more of me, but it honors the truth of who I am becoming. So let's be clear. Sacred decisions are not always the most convenient. They don't always win the popularity contest, but they are always in integrity with your soul. And that, dear one, is everything. Let me offer you a practical 4-step practice that you can use daily or whenever you find yourself facing a choice that matters. The first step is to pause. Before you act, respond, or commit, pause. Create space. Sacred decisions are born in stillness, not speed. Even just one conscious breath can create the room your spirit needs to speak. And that leads us to the second step, and that's to ask, where is this choice coming from? Is it coming from fear or guilt or pressure, or is it rising from truth and the desire of divine timing? Let's be honest, the energy behind the choice is often more important than the choice itself. And the third step is to feel it in the body. Your body is a sacred tuning fork. And ask yourself, when I imagine saying yes to this, how does my body respond? And when I imagine saying no, watch for signs. Tightness, lightness, nausea, chills, contraction, expansion. Your body knows. And the fourth is to let the still, small voice speak. It doesn't rush, it doesn't manipulate, it simply knows. Give yourself enough stillness to let it be. Even if it leads you into the unknown, because what happens when you decide to live from the sacred self? You see, when you begin making sacred decisions, your life begins to realign. You might not notice that some relationships fall away. Some roles no longer fit. Some doors close, yes, but others open that were made just for you. You begin to feel rooted instead of reactive, present instead of performative, and free instead of fearful. You discover that you no longer need permission to live your truth, you just need practice. And most importantly, you realize that your soul has always known the way. You were just never taught how to listen. But you're learning now. Each decision made from alignment strengthens your connection to your own divine center. Each choice becomes a breadcrumb on the path home. So let me say this clearly, in case your inner critic is already chiming in. You can trust yourself. You do know your own truth, and you are capable of living in full alignment with it. It might feel unfamiliar at first. You might wobble, you might hesitate, but you will not break. Because your sacred authority is not something you earn, it is something you remember. And every time you make a decision that honors your soul, you come one step closer to living the life that you were born to lead. So pause, breathe, discern, and then love. Choose from the sacred place within you that already knows. Beloveds, let's pause here, right here in this tender space where you've begun to recognize your power leaks, shed your borrowed beliefs, and align with sacred decision making. You've done something courageous. You've told the truth to yourself, and that, my friends, is the moment that everything begins to shift. But transformation isn't just a single insight or breakthrough. It's the steady practice of returning again and again to your own center. That's where ritual becomes not just helpful, but holy. So today I want to share a simple, potent daily ritual with you, one that you can return to every morning or anytime you feel scattered, off balance, or disconnected. It's a sacred practice of calling your power back, not from a place of force, but from remembrance. Because here's what I know. Your power is never gone. It's not lost, and it is not broken. It has just been dispersed, and you, yes, you have the authority, the right, and the sacred invitation to gather it again. Let's start by understanding what a ritual is, not as performance, but as presence. Ritual is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. It is the moment when your intention meets divine alignment. It is the daily pause that reminds your soul, I haven't forgotten you, and I am listening. In a world that constantly pulls us outward toward obligation, stimulation, and survival, ritual calls us inward, back to source, back to center, back to self. You don't need candles, crystals, or incense for this, though those are beautiful additions. What you need is presence. What you need is willingness, and what you need is you. So let's walk through the ritual step by step. The daily power reclamation ritual, this sacred practice, is just 4 simple steps, but when done with intention, it begins to reshape your energy field, your thought patterns, and your sense of identity. This isn't just a morning routine, it's a declaration of sovereignty. And the first step is to pause, to come home to the moment. Begin by placing one hand over your heart and the other over your belly, and breathe in slowly and exhale gently, repeating this 3 times. Feel the rise and fall beneath your hands. These are not just lungs or organs, they are sacred instruments of aliveness. And let your body know we are here, we are safe, and we are returning. Even if the day ahead feels uncertain, even if your sleep was restless, this breath is your anchor, this breath your sanctuary. Step 2 is to affirm, to speak your authority now. Speak these words aloud or silently in your heart if speaking isn't possible in the moment. Say, I call all of my power back to me, cleansed, clarified, and consecrated. Let the words land. Let them reverberate through your being. Let them be more than words. Let them be a summoning. You are not dragging your power back with desperation. You are inviting it home with dignity. You are calling back the parts of you that said yes when you meant no. You're calling back the parts of you that dimmed your light to make others comfortable. You are calling back the energy that you've scattered across conversations, regrets, or expectations that no longer serve your becoming. And you're not just calling it back. You're cleansing it in the light of love. Clarified because you are no longer available for distortion, and consecrated because your life is holy ground. Step 3 is to listen, to ask for alignment. Now gently, gently, gently ask yourself, what would sacred alignment look like for me today? And notice what arises. Maybe it's a word, a color, a feeling. Maybe it's a clear action or just an inner posture. You don't need to force an answer. You're not trying to get it right. You're simply asking the still small voice to speak and being open enough to hear it. This is the essence of self-sourced living. You're not waiting for signs from outside. You are turning toward the inner sanctuary and listening. Maybe sacred alignment today means saying no to something that drains you. Maybe it means reaching out to someone whose energy nourishes you. Maybe it means pausing before reacting, or allowing yourself to be held, or drinking water and resting without guilt. Whatever it is, trust it. You don't need to understand it to honor it. And our fourth step is to act, to embody the guidance. Now take one small action that honors what you received. Not 10 actions, not a complete overhaul, just one. Let it be doable, let it be meaningful. Let it be in integrity with what your soul just revealed. And this might look like sending an email you've been avoiding, canceling a commitment that no longer feels aligned, choosing a nourishing breakfast instead of skipping it again, or simply whispering, "I choose me," while brushing your hair. What matters is the energy behind it. You are no longer outsourcing your authority. You are embodying it, not someday, but today. Friends, remember this. This ritual is not just about feeling good, though it often will. It's about becoming trustworthy to yourself again. You see, every time you pause, affirm, listen, and act, you build the bridge between your spirit and your humanity. And over time, something miraculous happens. You no longer seek permission to live your truth. You no longer abandon yourself in the name of being nice or normal. You no longer feel fragmented or confused. You become coherent, aligned, whole. And this is how we gather the scattered parts of ourselves and weave them into a tapestry of truth. And it all begins with one breath, one word, one sacred moment of remembering. You are your own sacred source. Now let's slow everything down, not to disconnect, but to integrate. This journey that we've taken together today isn't just conceptual. Friends, it is sacred. And when we do sacred work, we honor it by giving it room to settle, to breathe, to root in the soil of our being, to take a breath with me now. Close your eyes if you feel safe. Let your body soften, even if just 5% more than a moment ago. You don't need to make sense of everything. You just need to be here. Now ask yourself this. Where in my life am I still surviving, just getting through, just maintaining, just enduring? Let the answer arise gently. It might come as a sensation, a memory, a relationship, or an area of your life, career, health, emotions, spirituality, where you have been overriding your truth, simply in an attempt to hold it all together. Don't judge it, just notice it, and then ask, where am I ready to reclaim my self-sourced sovereignty? This is the sacred turning point. This is the moment when survival begins to loosen its grip and sovereignty takes root. You might not have all the answers, and that's okay. What matters is your readiness, your willingness to say something new is possible. I am open. And now one final reflection. What borrowed belief am I ready to return? Maybe it's a belief about your worth. Maybe a belief about what you're allowed to want. Maybe it is a belief about how much space or love or joy that you're allowed to take up in this lifetime. Whatever it is, you get to bless it, thank it for whatever it once offered, and then release it. This is not mine, and I no longer need to carry it. And finally, what truth am I ready to embody? This is your homecoming, the truth of who you are, unshaken, unmuted, undefended. Let that truth rise, not from pressure, but from the still, small voice within you. That voice doesn't demand, it doesn't shout. It simply reminds you over and over. You are whole, you are wise, you are already enough. So stay in this moment for just a breath longer. Let the insights settle not just into your mind, but into your nervous system, your heart, into your very cells. And let today be the day that you choose to remember. And tomorrow you get to remember again. You're doing beautifully, love. You, dear travel partner, are not here to live by default. You are here to live by divine design. And that design begins when you stop outsourcing your power and come home to the sacred authority that has always lived within you. Let's keep walking each other home together with our head up and our wings